starting with the detailed study of human alimentary canal. So first part of the alimentary canal beginning from mouth, which is leading into the buccal cavity, which is also called the oral cavity, and our buccal cavity is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. And the space between the lips and the teeth, there is a narrow slit-like space which is called vestibule. And inner to the teeth, of course, it is the buccal cavity, which is formed by cheek, the hard and the soft palate, and the tongue. So first of all, taking up the roof of the buccal cavity, which is called the palate. And palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal cavity. So palate is the roof of the buccal cavity, or we can say it is the floor of the nasal cavity. Now in this palate also we have two parts, the anterior one, that is called the hard palate. It is the anterior portion and it is formed by our skull bones, that is the maxillae and the palatines. We have one pair of maxillae and one pair palatine bones. So these combined are forming the structure of hard palate. And this hard palate is also called secondary palate because it is not present in all vertebrates. This secondary palate first time arose in the crocodiles, and there onwards it is present in rest of the vertebrates. And in this case, presence of hard palate, it is having a suitable value in us. That means we can breathe and eat at the same time. While if this hard palate is not present, so that means while the animal is swallowing the food, during that time the breathing has to stop, as we can see in the case of frog. While in our case, breathing and swallowing are taking place simultaneously. Now this hard palate is hard structure. We can feel it by our tongue. If we push our tongue to the roof of the buccal cavity, we can feel the hard structure. So it is because of the bone present behind it, and it is covered by mucous membrane which is having transverse folds which are called rugae. Now posterior to the hard palate there is the soft palate, which is forming the posterior region, and it is a muscular structure, and since there is no bony support, so that is why it is soft. And from this soft palate there is a structure which is hanging behind, and that is called the uvula. The word uvula means a little grape. So just like a little grape like structure, it is hanging behind. And what is its purpose? That is, when we are swallowing the food, what happens is that the soft palate moves, and along with the uvula it closes the internal nostrils so that the food may not go into the nasal cavity. So this way, being a soft structure, muscular structure, it is able to close off the internal nostrils. Now coming on to the floor of the buccal cavity, and on the floor of the buccal cavity there is this muscular tongue, and here this is attached to the floor by a thin fold of a skin which is called the frenulum. Now moving on to the structure of the tongue. Now tongue is composed of skeletal muscles covered with mucous membrane. Now skeletal muscles are voluntary muscles, that means under the control of our will. And since these are skeletal muscles, so certainly these are attached to one or the other bones also. And these skeletal muscles of the tongue, they are attached to the hyoid bone, which is part of our axial skeleton or the skeleton of our skull, and this bone is just above the larynx, and to this hyoid the skeletal muscles are attached. And these skeletal muscles are also attached to the temporal bone again part of the skull bone, and it is attached to the floor of the buccal cavity by a thin fold of a skin that was just shown here in the diagram, and that was frenulum. Now if we see the upper surface of the tongue, we will find that there is a inverted V-shaped furrow which is called the sulcus terminalis, and it is dividing the tongue into two parts, and these two parts, let us mark them here. Now, this inverted V-shaped structure that you see here, this is the sulcus terminalis, and the part which is on the anterior side, that is the oral part of the tongue. This is oral part, and the part which is behind, that is the pharyngeal part. Now, if we look on this oral part, there are number of slight protuberances which are called the papillae. Now, one which is just adjacent to this sulcus terminalis, and these are the largest papilla that we have, and this one is named circumvallate papilla, or simply it can be also written as vallate papilla. Circumvallate papilla. Then all through this lateral margin also there are papilla which are deep red in color, and they can be easily observed also on the tongue, and these are the fungiform papilla. And the smallest papilla which are maximum in number, and those are the filiform papilla. So, these are the three types of papillae that we have. And these three types of papillae that we are having: circumvallate, which are the largest but least in number; fungiform, which are of medium size; and the smallest one, that is filiform, and they are maximum in number. And on this pharyngeal part of the tongue, there is presence of a tonsil, which is a lymphoid tissue that is concerned with immunity, and this tonsil is called lingual tonsil. Now, if we take the microscopic structure of these papillae, what we will find is that these papillae are having taste buds. Not all of them. The filiform papillae don't have any taste buds, but circumvallate and fungiform papillae, they are having taste buds. So, next thing that we can mention over here is that taste buds are present in two of the papillae, and those are vallate and fungiform. And these taste buds, they help us to perceive different types of taste. Now, what are the different types of taste that we can perceive? So, actually we can perceive 5 different types of taste. 5 types of taste can be perceived, and these are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and the 5th taste, that is umami. Now, this umami, this is a taste due to glutamic acid present in any food, or monosodium glutamate, which is used in as a flavor enhancer in number of foods. So it has a quite tangy taste and quite addictive, and that's why wherever more of that glutamate or glutamic acid is present, those type of foods become more addictive to us. Now, apart from these 5 different types of taste that we can perceive, there is one taste which we cannot, and that is the taste of the chilies. We don't have any taste for chilies. Rather, chilies, when they are taken, so they have certain alkaloids in them which cause a burning sensation. So rather it is a painful experience, but not when chilies are taken. Now, other than these 3 types of papillae, there are one more type of papillae which are present in some other organisms or some other animals, but not in humans, and that is the foliate papilla. So that too we can mention that foliate papilla, which is in the shape of a leaf, the foliate papilla is found in other animals but not in humans. So foliate papillae are absent in humans. So here the points that we need to remember is that taste buds in our case are present only in 2 types of papillae, that is circumvallate and fungiform, although we are having 3 types of papillae, and the third one being filiform. And the fourth one, which is present in other animals but not in humans, that is foliate. Now, other than this taste papillae, one more thing that we can mention over here is that how the perception of the taste will be possible, because these taste buds are receptors, and from a receptor a nerve impulse has to be carried to the CNS, that is to the brain, then only our body is able to recognize that taste. So the taste perception is possible because of certain cranial nerves, and those cranial nerves we can mention here itself, that is on the tongue. Here on this tongue region we have a taste bud, we have the taste receptors which are innervated by the 7th cranial nerve, and this 7th cranial nerve is named facial. And on this pharyngeal part, because the taste buds they are spread out even on the pharyngeal part, even on the palate, and some in the pharynx wall as well as on the wall of the epiglottis. So here it is the 9th, that is glossopharyngeal. So the perception of the taste will be possible if the impulses reach to the 7th here and they are carried to the brain, or from the 9th from here they are carried to the brain. And as we mentioned, 7th is facial and 9th is glossopharyngeal. Now, after taking up the structure of the tongue, the next part that is present within the buccal cavity, that is the teeth. The tongue is surrounded by the teeth. So let's move on to the structure of teeth. Now taking up the structure of teeth. Now in case of teeth, Now taking up the structure of teeth. Now in case of teeth, mammalian teeth are thecodont. Thecodont means which are embedded inside the sockets of jaw bones, and our upper jaw formed by the maxilla, one pair of maxillae, and lower jaw formed by a single mandible, and in both of them there are sockets which are also called alveoli, and in that the root of the teeth are embedded. Heterodont, that means teeth are of different types. We have 4 different types of teeth: incisors, canines, premolars and molars. Diphyodont, that is there are 2 sets of teeth in the life, and that means there will be 2 sets erupting. One is the milk teeth and then the permanent teeth. Now when we talk about dental formula, it is arrangement of the teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw. Now here let us say this is showing the upper and lower jaw, and we are taking the half of it, and this dental formula has to be written as the number of incisors, and incisors would be here, then this would be followed by the canine, then we have the premolars, and then finally the molars. So these have to be mentioned here: incisor, then canine, premolar, and finally the molars. Now if we take one half of the upper jaw and then we double it, so we will get the number for this entire upper jaw. Same way we will take it for the lower jaw, one half of it and double it. So this is how we represent the dental formula. So let us take how we write the dental formula. So first of all, starting with the milk teeth. Now milk teeth we have 20 in number, and the dental formula for this can be written in this form: 2102, that is for the upper jaw, and in the denominator what we write, that is for the lower jaw, 2102. Now here 2 incisors, 1 canine, 0 stands for that there is no premolar, and 2 molars. This can also be written as 212, reason being that where the premolars should have been present there is no gap, and the gap between the teeth is called diastema. So there is no diastema, rather molars are immediately taking up the place where the premolars should have been present. So that means the canines are followed by molars directly. So there is no space left in between. And if we take the total 212, that would be 5. So 5 in the one half of the upper jaw, 5 in the one half of the lower jaw, and when we double it, so we get 10 in the upper jaw, 10 in the lower jaw, making a total of 20. Now the way it is written may seem strange to you, but this is biological math. So this is how the milk dentition is there. The milk teeth are also called deciduous teeth because they are supposed to fall off, and these teeth, they start erupting usually by the time a child is between 6 months to 1 year of age, and slowly they will be reaching the entire number of 20 by the time the child reaches 6 years of age. And by the time the entire milk dentition is complete, they start falling off as well, to be replaced by the permanent teeth. So the next one, that is the permanent teeth. Now the dental formula for permanent teeth is 2123 upon 2123. That means now we have the premolars as well. So that makes a total of 8 in the one half of the upper jaw, 8 in the one half of the lower jaw, and that would be on doubling 16 in the upper jaw, 16 in the lower jaw, a total of 32. So what do we see? That 32, if we subtract 20 from it, that would be 12. So there are 12 teeth which are erupting only once in life. So that means there are 12 teeth which are monophyodont. And if just for this monophyodont teeth we have to write a dental formula, so that would be 0021, that is the premolars, and the third molar, which is also called the wisdom tooth, only those are the monophyodont one. So that means in total 8 premolars and 4 molars are monophyodont. Now taking up the structure of the tooth by taking a section through it. Now this is a tooth through which we have taken a longitudinal section. So in this longitudinal section, what do we find is that this part which we see outside, that much part is called the crown. This is the crown. A narrow region which is embedded in the gums, that is called neck. And the entire part which is embedded inside the socket of the jawbone, that is the root. So this entire tooth can be divided into 3 parts, or basically 2 parts, that is the crown and the root. Now on this crown, the outermost that we see here is enamel. Now enamel is the hardest substance, and this enamel is secreted by one particular type of cells which are called ameloblast cells, and enamel is ectodermal while the rest of the tooth is mesodermal. Then here we have this dentine. Now dentine cells which are called the odontoblast cells, and these odontoblast cells are lining this pulp cavity, and this pulp cavity that we see here, this is the living portion, and inside this pulp cavity there are blood vessels, there are nerves, and this is comprising a embryonic connective tissue inside, mesodermal, and that is mucoid connective tissue that is filled inside this pulp cavity. And this pulp cavity is lined, as we said, by odontoblast cells, which is secreting the dentine, and this dentine is also called the ivory. Now as we said that each tooth is through this pulp cavity, there are nerves also, and this nerve is a branch from one of the cranial nerve, that is the 5th cranial nerve, and that 5th cranial nerve is trigeminal, and it is also called dentist nerve because it is supplying the tooth. So the 5th cranial nerve, that is trigeminal, is giving off branches which are passing into the pulp cavity, and this trigeminal also called dentist nerve. Now in this structure we are able to see that there are 2 roots, but all teeth do not have 2 roots. The number of roots are different, so that too we can learn by a formula. So number of roots we can learn in this manner: 1, 1, 2, 3 by 1, 1, 1, 2. Now let me tell you what it means, that in the upper jaw, the incisors and canine, they have 1 root each. So these will be having a single root. The premolars have 2 roots, as can be seen here. The molar is having 3 roots. That means just like a tripod, 2 roots and 1 from the back side, so that is making 3 roots. While in the lower jaw, the incisors, canines, premolars, all 3 of them are having 1 root each, and the molars are having 2 roots. Now teeth are present in other organisms as well, so we can have a brief classification of the teeth. So here we have one classification on the basis of position, that is how the teeth are attached to the jawbone, and in this we have acrodont. Acro means on the tip, and the teeth are attached just on the surface of the jawbone. There is no root to be embedded inside the jawbone, and such type of teeth are found in fishes and amphibians. And these teeth are not meant for chewing, but rather to hold the prey and preventing it from escaping. The other one, that is pleurodont. Pleurodont is also attached on the jawbone but from the lateral surface, not on the tip, and these type of teeth are found in lizards and snakes, and these are also not meant for chewing. And the last one, that is thecodont. Thecodont, as we have seen in the case of humans, and they are found in other mammals as well and also in crocodiles. Now the other classification is on the basis of type of cheek teeth. Now the cheek teeth are the premolars and molars, and these two types of teeth are meant for grinding the food, for chewing the food, and for the proper chewing their grinding surface has certain types of modifications so that proper pulverization of the food can be carried out. So their classification is also a part of the teeth classification. So in this, one is bunodont. Now bunodont is characteristic of humans and other primates also, that means monkeys and apes. Here there are small, blunt and rounded cusps. Here the premolars are having two cusps, and that is why premolars are called the bicuspid of the dentist. And we know that bicuspid is also a valve present in our heart, but that would be for a cardiologist. For a dentist, the bicuspid are the premolars. And the molars are having four cusps. Coming to lophodont, lophodont are found in elephants where there are quite large ridges present on the grinding surface, because these elephants, they chew branches from the trees, and for that such strong grinding surface is required. The selenodont, that is present in other herbivores like sheep, cattle, horses, here there are half moon shaped ridges which are present, and such teeth are called selenodont. And last but not the least, we have cecodont, which are having sharp pointed cusp, and that is for tearing flesh, and these are found in case of carnivores. Now we can use this information and answer a few questions. So here we have a question, upper molars in the human dentition have. Now if you remember the formula that I just now gave you for remembering how many roots are present, so it was 1, 1, 2, 3 upon 1, 1, 1, 2. So upper molars 1, 1, 2, 3. That means the molars are having 3 roots. So here our answer is option 2. Now let's take another question. Here a baby boy aged 2 years is admitted to play school and passes through a dental checkup. The dentist observed that the boy had 20 teeth. Which teeth were absent? Now the child who is admitted to play school must be hardly 3 years old, and in such a child, if there are 20 teeth, that means it is milk dentition where the premolars are absent. So that means our answer is option 3. So we have taken the buccal cavity where the important structures present are the teeth and the tongue. Now let's move ahead from the buccal cavity and pass into pharynx. Moving on to pharynx. Now pharynx, which is also called throat, and it is common passage for food and air. Now this entire pharynx is divisible into three parts, and these are just physiological divisions. So this area which is behind the nasal cavity, this one is called nasopharynx. And nasopharynx is meant for passage of air only. Food won't be passing through it, as you can see that this area is above the soft palate, and during swallowing this soft palate would be rising up, so that this opening, which is the internal nostril, is going to be entirely closed. Then this green area which we have marked over here, this is behind the buccal cavity, and this one is called oropharynx. And in this oropharynx, we can very well see that air as well as food coming from the buccal cavity, both would be passing. And then the most inferior area, that is the laryngopharynx. And this laryngopharynx is leading to the windpipe, which is on the anterior side, and the food pipe or the esophagus, which is posterior to the windpipe. Now in this entire pharyngeal area, there are number of lymphoid tissue. Now lymphoid tissue are in the form of tonsils present over here, and these lymphoid tissue, they would be releasing one of the immunoglobulin, that is IgA, because maximum pathogens are entering in our body through air, food and water. So while air, food and water is passing through the pharynx, some of these pathogens can be taken care of here itself. So these tonsils are like guards which are just present at the openings leading into our respiratory system and the digestive system. Now these tonsils, they are arranged in the form of a ring, and through that ring the food, air and water has to pass through, and this ring is called Waldeyer's ring. So this is the entire area of the pharynx, and around it the tonsils are arranged, and these tonsils here, which will be in the nasopharynx area, this one is the pharyngeal tonsil. Then here it is tubal tonsil. Tubal tonsil because it is surrounding the opening of the eustachian tube. Now eustachian tube is a narrow tube from our middle ear, and it is opening into the nasopharynx area. So that opening is surrounded by the tubal tonsils. Then here, just at the base here, there is the palatine tonsil. And lastly, we can mention here the lingual tonsil, which we had shown on the pharyngeal part of the tongue also. So these are 4 different sets of tonsils which are surrounding the pharyngeal area, and they are arranged in this ring-like structure which is named Waldeyer's ring. Now this pharynx, if we talk about the alimentary canal, pharynx is leading into the food pipe or the esophagus, and from the esophagus till the anus, the entire GIT is a long tube. Somewhere it is broader, somewhere it is narrower, somewhere it is highly twisted, but actually it is a long tube. So before we take each part of the GIT, that is esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine separately, we'll rather take the histology, because histology of the entire GIT is almost the same. At few places there would be difference that we will discuss separately. So let us begin with the histology. So if we see the GIT, what do we find? That it is a hollow tube, and the cavity through which the food would be passing, the cavity of any hollow organ is called lumen. And this entire tube, if we see the tissue structure, there are 4 layers, and starting from outside, the outermost layer is called serosa. And this serosa, it is made up of a thin mesothelium, which is nothing but squamous epithelium or our visceral peritoneum, and with some connective tissue, because wherever there is epithelium towards the basement membrane or below the basement membrane, there is some amount of connective tissue present. So this is the serosa. Now this serosa is present all along the GIT, but at 2 of the regions it is absent, that is the upper 1/3 region of the esophagus and also the rectum, that is the anterior most part and the posterior most part. There the serosa is absent. Then the second layer, that is inner to serosa, this layer that we see here, this one is the muscularis externa. And in this muscularis externa, or just it is called muscular coat, there are 2 layers of smooth muscles. And these smooth muscles are, the outer one is longitudinal, it is running along the length of the GIT, and the one which is on the circumference, that one is the circular muscle. So if the circular muscle contracts, the lumen will be narrowed, while contraction of these longitudinal muscle is going to cause the length of the alimentary canal to shorten, but then in that case the lumen will broaden. Now in this case, these muscularis or muscular coat is made up of smooth muscles, but in the upper 1/3 part of the esophagus there are skeletal muscles present. Then coming to the third layer. The third layer is the submucosa. This green one shown over here, this is the submucosa. It is formed of loose connective tissue, and that loose connective tissue is areolar, which is also containing number of blood vessels, lymph vessels, and also nerves are present here. And then coming to the innermost layer, that one is called mucosa. And any layer which is named mucosa means it is having mucus secreting goblet cells. And this mucosa, if we further see it microscopically, we will find that it is subdivided into 3 layers. And these 3 layers, starting from the submucosal end, so one is muscularis mucosae or muscularis interna, which is again having longitudinal and circular smooth muscles. However, this layer would be much thinner in comparison to the muscular coat or the muscularis externa. Then below that there is lamina propria, which is again comprising loose connective tissue, that is areolar, and innermost, that means the one which is lining the lumen, there would be epithelium. And the kind of epithelium we find in our GIT, it is columnar epithelium. Since we have named it mucosa, so all along there are goblet cells present, so it is glandular as well. And in certain regions like in the stomach, small intestine, it is going to form some more specialized exocrine glands which will be secreting the gastric juice, intestinal juice, so on. But the goblet cells are uniformly present all over the GIT. Now, apart from these 4 layers, there are lots of nerve cells also present in our alimentary canal. And there are so many nerve cells that some of them, they are forming a continuous complex which is present in between the longitudinal and circular muscles, and another one which is present in the submucosa. Now let us see this nervous structure which is present. Now enteron is a word used for the intestine or the gastrointestinal tract, and this entire nervous system associated with our GIT has been named enteric nervous system. And the wall of the gut has many neurons which are forming these network, complex network called plexus. Rather, one of the author has said that the gut is your second brain, because the number of neurons we have in our gut or in our GIT, they are second only to the number that we have in our brain. And these 2 plexi, they are Auerbach's plexus, and the other one is the submucosal or the Meissner's plexus. Now this Auerbach plexus is the one which is between the longitudinal and circular muscle layer. So, between longitudinal and circular muscle layer of the muscularis externa, it is present, and it is controlling the peristaltic movement. Now, peristalsis is alternate contraction and relaxation of the muscles, which creates a wave-like motion, and through that the food mixed with the enzymes, that is the chyme, and from the esophagus when it starts, it's the bolus, that will be moving. And this nervous system is connected to our autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is part of our nervous system which is not under the control of our will. And this ANS has two divisions, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic, where parasympathetic will be stimulating the process of peristalsis and sympathetic will be inhibiting it. The other plexus, that is Meissner's or the submucosal, the submucosal term itself gives the location that it is located inside the submucosa, and this one is controlling the secretion of gastrointestinal glands. And again, this is also connected with our ANS, where sympathetic nervous system inhibits the secretions of the gastrointestinal glands while parasympathetic division stimulates them. Now, let us move to a question where we can utilize this information. So, here we have a question: which of the following is correct location and function of Meissner's plexus of the intestine? So, Meissner's plexus, as we had seen, it is also called submucosal plexus. So, here muscularis externa, there we had the Auerbach's plexus, so this is not there. Muscularis interna, that is incorrect. Submucosa, and it is responsible for the various mucosal secretions, because the glands which are present in our digestive tract, they are basically in the mucosa, although there are exceptions to that too, which we will be moving ahead when we study about other parts of the alimentary canal. So, here our answer is going to be option number 3. Class, we have studied about the basic structure of our alimentary canal, its histology, and some of the important structures present in our buccal cavity. Now, in the next class, we will be taking up each individual part and what all different secretions, functions are associated with them. So, hope you have enjoyed today's class. See you in the next class. Thanks for watching.